Are Serb nationalists planning for war in Bosnia? According to some reports, they are. Angered by international recognition of Kosovo and anti-Russian sentiment, some have chosen to fight for the Kremlin in Ukraine. So could their efforts be building toward a return to conflict in the Balkans? I'm Andrea Sankey, and this is the Newsmakers. A number of Bosnians will say reports insinuating their country is slowly descending back into civil war are exaggerated. But the worry for others is that the fringes are coming to the fore. The Serb nationalists of Republika Srpska have been trying to secede from the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Their attempts so far have failed, and their president, Milorad Dodick, was removed from office in August. But some say Dodik's followers are still preparing, seeking Russian support, and volunteering to fight for the Kremlin in Ukraine. So is the state of Bosnia and Herzegovina in danger? Here's a look.
On the front lines of Ukraine, foreign fighters are not a side story. They're embedded in Russian units, taking part in some of the war's heaviest fighting, among them men from the Balkans. According to Britain's Telegraph newspaper, hundreds of Serb militants from Bosnia and Serbia have travelled to Ukraine to fight for Russia, driven by nationalist ideology and the belief that the war could one day reshape borders and political realities back home. That belief matters most in the Balkans, a region where war, borders and identity remain deeply divisive. Bosnia and Herzegovina sits at the centre of those tensions, still shaped by the legacy of the 1990s war. Within the country, Republika Srpska stands out, the Serb-dominated entity born out of that conflict, and a space where nationalist politics continue to challenge the post-war order. Those dynamics are closely linked to Serbia, where political narratives around identity and territory continue to resonate across borders, and to Kosovo, a territory that declared independence in 2008, recognized by many states, but still claimed by Serbia as its sovereign land. So against that backdrop, the war in Ukraine is not seen by some as a distant conflict, but as part of a broader struggle tied to unresolved questions in the Balkans. In both Bosnia and Serbia, laws around fighting for a foreign power are difficult to enforce. They can result in prison sentences of up to 5 years. Yet enforcement has been limited, allowing recruitment networks to continue operating largely unchecked. In early 2025, Milorad Dodick, the former president of Republika Srpska, who still holds significant political influence, was photographed in Moscow with Davor Savicic, known as the Wolf, a signal that recruitment networks sit close to political power.
I founded the Brigade of Fools, and I want to address those who are being misled. Recruitment is now officially carried out through contracts with the Ministry of Defense. Recruits are first sent to Ryazan for training, and after completing it, they are deployed. I also want to call on Russians and Serbs. The unit exists, we are active, and we will continue our operations.
His remarks place recruitment within a system that presents itself as official and closely aligned with the Russian state.
There is no separate Serbian unit within the Russian army. Anyone who comes here signs a contract directly with the Russian military and is deployed wherever they are needed. There are no Serbian-only groups or commanders. Claims that recruits will serve under a Serbian command are simply not true.
The message is clear. Identity helps bring people in, but it means little once they reach the front. As the war in Ukraine continues, its effects are once again reaching beyond the battlefield and back into the Balkans. With unresolved tensions still in place, the growing flow of fighters is adding momentum to a familiar and volatile dynamic, one the Balkans has seen before.
So are Serb nationalists potentially fomenting another armed conflict in the Balkans? Well, joining me now to debate that and more are from Sarajevo, Executive Director and Editor of the Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, Denis Dzidic. From France, visiting Senior Research Fellow at King's College London, Anna Matvieva. And from London, author of Bosnia, Herzegovina, The End of a Legacy, Neven Anjelic. Thank you all so much for being with me. Denis, I'll start with you. Just, anecdotally, some Bosnians I've spoken to have said reports about a return to war in the Balkans are mostly exaggerated. But when you see so many kind of agitating factors, not least the fact that fighters from Bosnia are working on behalf of, Russian interests in Ukraine, do you worry?
I think there's an issue with the fact that people talk about it in a very black and white kind of in a very black and white way. So there's either going to be a full scale war or there's not going to be nothing. And the reality is, like it always is the reality is very gray. The fact is that there isn't the setup, there isn't the mobilization, and there isn't the pressure cooker possibility of a full-scale conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And there's nothing like that, and there hasn't been anything like that ever since the visa liberalization regime. So I don't think that that is at all likely or even possible within this reality. However, when we talk about the dozens of people that we've revealed are going to fight on the Russian side in Ukraine during the Ukrainian invasion by Russian forces from Republika Srpska, the reality is that some of them are coming back and they are security threats for many reasons. For one, they can be sleeper agents, they can be mobilized by the Russian army to enact any kind of violence and to send different types of messages, even to the Bosnian Serb officials who are pro-Kremlin, but if they do not kind of walk the line that the Kremlin wants, these kind of agents can be used. Secondly, in a very ethnically charged environment, when we have specific dates like January 9th, the unconstitutional day of Republika Srpska that's going to be commemorated soon on this Friday, there can be small incidents of violence against returnees, Bosniaks, Croats. These can kind of lead to tensions on the ground on a very local level, yes, but they can be tensions. So I think the reality is that we need to think of this as a security challenge, but maybe calling it a challenge in terms of a full-scale wars is definitely off the mark or exaggerated.
Okay, so nothing is black and white. And as we know, Neven, nothing is simple in the Balkans. But still, like I said, the worry for some is that those fringe elements will kind of come to the fore. We're seeing reports, and as Denis was saying, that there are dozens of Bosnian nationals going to fight in Ukraine to fight for Russia. But others say hundreds. How many are there, and how seriously do you think they should be taken?
Well, Denis and colleagues from his organization did some excellent investigative report on these issues, and it is really impossible to come to the specific number. Everything is based on estimates, but what they did, they found out the process, how it is working, how they find, how the Russian recruiters find and reach the potential trainees from Bosnia and Herzegovina and from Serbia. And again, the numbers, we can question them. It might be dozens, it might be even more. To be honest, I doubt it. Economic crisis might initiate the recruitment base to be larger, and the economic crisis is present in the region. However, there are plenty of potentials. I mean, the people are recruited for manual labor skilled jobs in Russia, but also for the manual labor skilled jobs in Greenland, for example, to work in the fish industry, in Western Europe. So I doubt it that there will be huge potential for high numbers to be actually recruited to go to fight for war and risk their lives.
But Neven, just clarify for me. I mean, would you actually compare the need for economic desperation, let's put it that way. Would you compare those going to Greenland for those actually going to fight for the Russians in the field?
Because Greenland made headlines this weekend, and since then, so that's the reason why I put it over there. But generally speaking, in the 1990s, there was a huge number of people from Bosnia and Herzegovina and from neighboring countries who had active experience of fighting the war. And there was the potential and actually the search for them to be recruited. When the Russian aggression in Ukraine started in 2014, the numbers were larger. But right now, the recruitment base might be based more on the people with no experience of fighting the war. They need a training, and they are aware that actually one could lose life in attempts to fight the war for whatever the cause. So I think that the core of potential recruits into the Russian forces in Ukraine is rather small. However, those who do go there, they might be really a security risk.
Okay. Anna, let me ask you this, and I'm quoting the Telegraph newspaper here, which says, hundreds of militants have traveled to Ukraine to fight alongside Russian troops in the belief that Mother Russia will repay them by helping them retake lost Serbian territories, such as Kosovo. Is that an unspoken agreement there?
I don't think so. I think this narrative is emotionally comforting because Bosnian Serbs did feel that the West have failed them. And if there is somebody who is big and expresses solidarity, that feels kind of good that we are not alone. But just to build upon what your two previous speakers said, Bosnia had a problem with foreign fighters going to the theaters of war action. Just maybe about 12 years ago, there were Bosnian Muslims leaving the country to join international terrorist movements like Jabhat al-Nusra, like Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. That was a major worry. Exactly the same argument that these people would be ideologically indoctrinated, that they will be posing a security threat, that they will be very determined to import this radical agenda into Bosnia and destabilize the whole region. The same phenomenon in Kosovo, because these fairly small countries were sending per capita quite a large proportion of people to the war theaters abroad. So now we're seeing the same phenomenon, just with a different ideological content, if you like, if there is a lot of content, because I suspect that money, sense of adventure, prospect of having a Russian passport, having education there, settling there, is attractive to some people. So not necessarily. So this is a mixture of motivations, and not all of them would be something which would be like very ideologically committed. But the kind of the arguments rehearsed now are very similar to what I heard about 12 years ago in respect of people joining fighting in the Middle East.
Well, then let me ask Denis, if, somewhat based on ideology, do these fighters have the right to defend Russian interests in Ukraine, especially when they feel their interests, including their ideological alignment with Russia, are being ignored and or marginalized back home?
I honestly wouldn't say any of those interests were marginalized. I think in general, this type of narrative is predominantly a Russian disinformation tactic that's being spread all across the region, through various means, through politically motivated, politically affiliated, state broadcasters in Serbia, in Republika Srpska, through politically aligned media also online, and then obviously by Russian channels like Sputnik, like Russia Today, and then through Telegram. And what we are seeing, unfortunately, is that these kind of anti-West narratives and this kind of alleged marginalization of those kind of connections with Russia is developing kind of a negative sentiment in Republika Srpska. The reality is that there hasn't ever been a major economic connection. The historical connections are there, and they're still definitely honored, respected, part of the tradition, and all present in Republika Srpska. And I would even say in most of the federation as well, other than in the last few years after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I think in reality, when we talk about whether somebody has the right to go and fight in a different war, in a different territory, it's a legal issue. And in Bosnia and Herzegovina, as the colleague before me just eloquently spoke about, we have had a change of law after the rise of ISIS, and after we've had a couple of hundred people who have decided to join up ISIS, and since then joining the foreign battlefield has been criminalized. So I think in that sense it's quite a clearly stated issue, and one where we can't say there is any kind of gray zone or misunderstanding. And what is the problem in Bosnia and Herzegovina is that we are seeing our own prosecutor's office, which is quite politically motivated, quite politically influenced, also heavily, from Republika Srpska, is that it is not treating for fighting in Ukraine in the same way that it has treated fighting for, ISIS or
Okay.
or other.
Yeah. Let me ask, Nevin, I'll ask you about that, because some say there is a lack of clarity on the law, which prohibits people from going abroad to fight in foreign armies. I mean, as far as Croatia is concerned, to prosecute a citizen, it has to show that they've joined a foreign terrorist organization. So, yeah, a group like Daesh, whereby the Wagner Group, Russian forces, the Ukrainian army, even the Azov battalion don't qualify as terrorist groups. So can these men in Bosnia-Herzegovina be fighting for foreign armies legally? Is there a sort of loophole that they can go through? Because no one has been prosecuted unless they've been brought to charges of actual war crimes committed on foreign territory.
I mean, this is why we pay huge money the lawyers who are then arguing one way or the other, and never admitting that something is clearly stated in the law. But legally, the wording might not be specific enough, but legally, the citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina, even the citizens in the neighboring Serbia, they are banned from fighting in foreign wars. But we know that this happens. I mean, in Belgium, it happens in the UK. The citizens of these countries, of many European countries, rushed to the Middle East to join Daesh and their forces so just over 10 years ago. So what is the case now is the lack of the prosecution by the state authorities. And this is a reflection, again, of the lack of the rule of law in Bosnia and Herzegovina, or the struggles with the rule of law. The state, I would say, the state does function, but not all institutions function properly. And this is not the only aspect of the lack of legal authorities doing their job in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And this is how it is being used by people who actually clearly break the line and break the law, and by joining the war in foreign countries.
Anna, you disagree there?
Yes, I think I slightly disagree in a way that I don't think that it is a really problem of Bosnia and Bosnian legal system or its enforcement. I think that's a general problem. What do you do with solidarity fighters if there is no proven terrorist intent? The war in Ukraine and previously the war in Syria has attracted a lot of solidarity fighters, so-called volunteer combatants. So normally the side which is against call them mercenaries and accuse them of the crime of mercenarism because they are being paid something. The side which they are fighting for, they are telling everybody that they are people who are joining solidarity, that, for example, in Britain, roughly about 1,000 people joined the Ukrainian International Legion, and also a lot of other people from other countries. Here in Georgia, for example, White Legion, they came to fight in Ukraine. So kind of participation of foreign fighters in other people's wars is now a global phenomenon. Nobody really knows what to do with it. And classifying them as pure mercenaries is probably quite wrong. What happened to them thereafter is either they return disappointed, which I suspect some of these people from Bosnia would too. Some of them would stay where they are, what they are fighting for, and maybe build a new life there.
Yeah, you've said, Anna, that it is important to distinguish between foreign fighters who are in Ukraine as mercenaries versus those who are there in solidarity. But let me ask, we're running quite low on time, though. Denis, I mean, since you feel the danger of descent into war within the Balkans is a bit exaggerated now, do you think there's just a peaceful way that grievances, even if they're fueled by Russian propaganda, grievances should be addressed peacefully now to avoid any chance of real armed conflict?
I think there needs to be many things that are happening. Just to briefly kind of connect to what Anna was saying, I fully understand what she means, that there are kind of differences in how we should treat them. But at the same time, we need to look at the fact that from Bosnia and Herzegovina, we've had about 200 people going to go to fight in Syria and Iraq. Of the 60 that have come back, all of them have been charged and all of them have been convicted. In the case of Bosnian Serbs who have gone to fight in 2014 and that have gone now, we have 0 convictions and we just have 1 indictment. So it is not the same. When we say it is a rule of law issue, it is a rule of law issue in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is truly an issue of a politically affiliated prosecution and the way that they treat these cases, and they treat them differently in case you are a Bosniak and in case you are a Serb. So I think that's important to understand for Bosnia. When we talk about what things need to happen, I think we need to have rule of law. I think we need to have a deterrent effect of some convictions, because we did see the stopping to go join or the numbers reduced drastically after we have had the first convictions of people who have gone to fight in Syria. So I think that deterrent is very, very real, and I think that needs to happen. I think other societal issues need to be addressed. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, a lot of our attention is obviously, connected to the legacies of the war, and it is truly baffling that, we have just marked 30 years since the end of our war. We have never, ever had any kind of transitional justice strategy, any kind of strategic attempt to deal with the legacies of the war. We have really just kind of relied on war crime prosecutions to kind of address the legacies of the past, which in reality will not happen in and of itself just by prosecuting a handful of war criminals. So I think that needs to happen, this whole society approach to insert other memorialization, reparations, victims' rights. All of these things need to happen so that we can have an honest and serious conversation about our path, so that we can have that kind of conversation about our future.
Okay, but Nevin, let me ask you if you worry at all that any further prosecution that Denis was referring to be used as a deterrent effect could actually just be seen as further agitation against the citizens of Republika Srpska.
It will definitely be interpreted as such by the radical nationalist politicians. Whatever it is done, I mean, even with the speeding camera issuing the penalty for speeding while driving a car, it is interpreted. This targeted is specifically this ethnic group and so on. So this is impossible to be avoided. However, in reality, it will, as Denis mentioned, it would deter people from joining forces and going to fight the war. So I will just try to add, you clarified the distinction between the people who go to fight, who are recruited to fight for whatever reasons, and those who go out of the solidarity. But basically, whichever way, they break the law. And they should be fined responsible, or the law should be changed. This is another matter, but this is more global matter.
And a very quick final 30 seconds.
My question is, for which I don't have an answer, is that if those people went to fight for Ukraine under the same conditions, would they be considered as sort of bad people who would need to be prosecuted, or they would be considered doing the right thing? In terms of Bosnia, I'm not sure whether it needs more prosecutions and more international justice. I think it needs a forward-looking project which will be positive and allow the whole of society to move forward in hopefully more brighter and hopeful future.
Okay, Anna, that will have to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank all three of my panelists sincerely so much for being with us, and our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.